Well, hello there, gang. Welcome to the 30. This is your host, Patrick, once again. I want to thank you for being here, episode 101. Let me take this time to thank all of you that showed up last week for our 100th episode of the 30. We had a fantastic time. We had some great guests as we continue this week. We'll continue with as we celebrate National Caribbean American Heritage Month. We're going to be doing this, as I said, from the first Thursday of the month. We're going to do this right through till the end of June as we celebrate our heritage. Those of us that are from the Caribbean, born or raised, or those of you that may have some people or peoples, as they would say, from back in the island. So I have a very special guest that's going to be coming up shortly. He hails from, he told me forget about the W, but it's Antigua. So there we go. As opposed to Antigua, some of you may say Antigua, but it's Antigua. So he hails from, he's a native son of Antigua and Barbuda, and we are going to bring him up shortly. That's Jerome Underwood, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about himself and about his journey. So stay tuned, and we will be right back. Certainly, we want to welcome you to the 30 once again as we celebrate National Caribbean American Heritage Month. We want to thank you. We are streaming to 3 places, folks: Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you can't catch us live, but you heard as to how great this episode is going to be, you can catch it on replay either on LinkedIn or Facebook or on our YouTube channel under the Jackman Group LLC. So thank you for being here. Let's welcome in our esteemed guest, Jerome Underwood. Jerome, welcome to the 30. How are you?
I am peaceful, Patrick. Peaceful. Good afternoon or good evening to you and all of your listeners.
Well, thank you, Jerome. Tell our viewers who Jerome is, where you hail from. I gave them a brief description about where you hail from, but I know you have a lot more. I see your flag is in the back, flying strong. So tell our viewers who Jerome is and where he's from.
Wow. I hail from, as we call it, a little bit of paradise, Antigua and Barbuda, the twin island state of Antigua and Barbuda, where hopefully all of you, everyone watching, gets a chance to go because as we said, the beach is just the beginning, of which we have 365 of those. So born and bred in Antigua and Barbuda, mom and dad, my mom was born in the island of Dominica. My dad was born in the island of Montserrat. So we're very much a Caribbean family. In terms of who we are, my siblings, of which maybe 1 or 2 of them may be listening right now, we don't go too far into a conversation about who we are before Granny comes up. My mom's mother, Jane Elizabeth Toussaint, who I think is a fulcrum in many, many, many of our lives, not only us as siblings, but our children and their children. So, growing up in Antigua was a tremendous amount of fun. But my grandmother migrated from Dominica to Antigua in 1942. And we have been there ever since. And I say we have been there because, our roots begun in Antigua when we were born. My father and my mother met in Antigua, and they were married in 1959. And I had the distinct privilege of being born literally on their 2nd anniversary. So with my brothers and I have 5 brothers. So 6 of us as boys and and my two sisters who both follow me. Um, you know, growing up, we spent a lot of time, again, because of Granny, in the market in Antigua, the public market. My grandmother, our grandmother rather, was a vendor in the public market. And even before they had a public market, and literally they built a market around her and some others. So that market was important because we didn't know the word entrepreneur, but
Mm.
Granny was an entrepreneur, even though she didn't have hardly any formal education. So, but she bought and sold fruits and vegetables and the dry goods. And myself, my brothers, and my sisters learned commerce there. But we learned more than commerce. We learned a lot about values. We learned about integrity, and we learned to help others. So that was a very, very strong part of our foundation. As far as school is concerned, elementary school and high school, we went to Catholic school. Why? Because Granny said that we needed to, so that provided a lot of the foundation for us there. And school was a tremendous amount of fun. And if I'm also lucky, a couple of my high school classmates may also be watching this episode because we maintain a friendship up to today. So shout out to the class of 1979 of St. Joseph's Academy that we call the best class that ever came out of Academy and also out of Antigua. So we have some bragging rights to defend. So yeah, school, community. We were from a community called Point and Villa in Antigua, where just the whole word community was very, very important. A lot of very amazing athletes, strong academics, but a
Mm.
really, really tight bond in our community as far as culture and the arts, and like I said, academics, and even political participation as well.
Great. What were some of the things, Jerome, that Granny and your parents taught you that you brought over to United States and that you continue to live by today?
Wow,
Maybe a couple
so
of them.
much, so much. I mentioned just integrity.
Hmm.
As a market woman, as my grandmother and her colleagues were called. Market was a tough place, because there was very little that to feed off of, if you will. Lots of, as I said, more sellers than buyers. But Granny was very, very strict when it came to integrity and being honest and treating people fairly and helping other people. So that is very, very important. At the same time, um, as a single parent, she was a very tough lady. In other words, she always used to tell us, no, don't fight, but sure as hell fight back. Don't let anyone, take advantage of you. And my grandmother literally fought. She did not take stuff from anyone. So that's a big part of our family. So, the word resilient is being used a lot, but that was a woman that we saw get up at 5 o'clock, maybe 4:30 every morning. You've seen it as a Caribbean person,
Hmm.
probably put maybe 60 pounds of weight on top of her head and two other bags, one in the left and one in the right hand, maybe another 20, 30 pounds each, and walk a mile and a half to the market. Because when, my brothers and I, when we got maybe 6, 7 years old, we used to accompany her, so work ethic is another thing we learned, to work hard to achieve what you want and to aim high. All of those, I would say typical Caribbean tenants. As I mentioned, she didn't have much formal education, but she was very strict. Not only she as Granny, but my parents as well were very strict when it comes to education. I remember Granny used to tell us, you bring home, like a test paper, and you got a B, and Granny would say, B means you can do better. So, yeah, so that quest for excellence, and why not you be the best? Why not
Sure.
you be the first? So those things I stay with me up until today, and I try to pass on to our children and the young people that I mentor as well.
That's great. B, you can do better. I love that.
Yeah,
That's
B
that's
means you can do
perfect.
better.
That's
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
Now you came over to the U.S. and let's talk about your journey because you've achieved a lot. You've achieved your bachelor's, an MBA. So let's talk about your journey when you came over, schooling and everything else.
I tell people, football or soccer in America is how I got to this country, like
Mhm.
literally. I had a little bit of talent, or some would say a lot of talent, with the soccer ball. And that essentially was my ticket, if you will, to come to the United States, and specifically to Rochester. Uh, However, I tell young people this part about the story because I thought I was going to get a soccer scholarship, if you will. Little did I know that when I arrived here for the tryout, which is going back to 1984, I didn't know anything about NCAA rules, and I thought I was going to get a scholarship. And after the tryout, the coach said, "Oh, we got to get you here." And and I said, "Yeah, the only way I can come." Because my family couldn't afford to pay for college, uh, was through a scholarship. And he said, well, we can't give financial incentives because we're a third division school. I didn't understand anything that he said. However, I understood the word can't.
Mm.
However, 4 or 5 seconds after that, he asked me the proverbial question. He said, "How are your grades?" So at that point, the door that I thought was closed was literally kicked in, because I said to him, "If you like my football, you're going to really like my academics." So because of that, again, the granny factor, school, pay attention. We were, everybody in my family was a good student, everybody. So I ended up getting a 4-year academic scholarship to St. John Fisher College. And, and all I had to do was play football. Are you kidding me? So I tell young people that story because the scholar athlete piece is really, really important. But soccer literally was my ticket to higher education.
Wow.
So, and before I finish that story of how I got here, I have to mention the path that opened up for not only myself but others, was came via the Partners of Americas, which I won't take up too much of your time saying what Partners is, but I have to mention Partners of Americas and Dave and June Oker, who was like a mother and father to so many of us who came through a very similar path.
Wow. That's a fantastic story. And a lesson out of that to write is that a couple of them is if one door seemed closed,
Yeah,
another one or others can be open. But second,
without a
but more
doubt.
importantly, the importance of academics versus sports.
Yes, yeah, and having both is a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. So I am talking to Jerome Underwood. Currently, Jerome is the president and CEO of Action for a Better Community here in Rochester, but he's the native son of Antigua and Barbuda, and we're talking about his journey. So after that, Jerome, let's talk about where you went next. And I'm going to ask our viewers if you have any questions or comments for Jerome, simply put them in the comments box and we'll bring them up so he can answer them for you. So after graduation, where did you go next?
So, because my father was an accountant, you know, um, when I was 13, 14 years old, when we weren't at the market helping granny, we were at daddy's office, taking care of people's trial balances. So,
Hmm.
you know, I had an affinity for accounting, and indeed, I ended up majoring in accounting. And you see, with my bio, I got a bachelor's in accounting. Um, my first real job out of school was in finance, in banking, actually, where I was fortunate to be hired by, it was Marine Midland Bank at the time that it ended up being Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC. And so again, because of just knowing finance, I ended up being a commercial lending officer for a long time and managing a lot of the bank's money, a whole lot of money. So I'm really good with money because I learned it in the market. I really did. So I spent about 8 or 9 years with the bank, and then I went to work for one of my customers, which was a really, really good move for me because it was a Black-owned business. And my number one mentor to this day, his name is Bill Rose, who owned the company, asked me to be his chief financial officer. And I did that when I left the bank, and I was occupied by Datros Incorporated as CFO and vice president for about 11 years. During my time there, close to the end of my time, I was then introduced to the then superintendent of schools in Rochester, another island man by the name of John Claude Brizard. And literally, very first conversation, he said, "I need you to come work here," which I said, "No." I heard the school district is a crazy, crazy place. But he articulated a vision to me about children and young people. And at the time, I was coaching young people soccer, and that was my big volunteer thing because I saw a lot of myself in those young people, as we use the sport as a way to advance through life. But what John Claude said to me is that, in the institution, which is the Rochester City School District, there were a lot of educators, but there weren't not a lot of people who knew how to run a business. And so that was appealing to me. And I ended up being at the district for 9 years. Along that time, because, I was getting more and more involved in community related items. When I was working at Datros, as a matter of fact, I started serving on the board of Action for a Better Community, because the mission of ABC is to eradicate poverty. And that is very endearing to me because where I come from, there are a lot of poor people, and I see people working to try to, just get their head above water, never mind their shoulders. So I'm committed to that. And and now I'm the CEO of ABC, so it is a really, really moment of privilege for me to be leading an organization with a mission and a commitment to helping others to self-actualize.
Awesome. And ABC is Action for a Better Community, right? Not
Yes.
ABC in terms of a TV station,
Yeah.
but locally in Rochester is the
Action.
Action for a Better Community. Great.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
No problem. So, what are some of the things I want to talk about real quickly? What are some of the things that Action for a Better Community does? And then I know you do a lot more than just here in Rochester, but you also do some things in your homeland as well as in Africa. So we're going to talk about those things, but give us some idea as to what ABC Action for a Better Community does.
We are what's called a community action organization. We are part of a network, a national network of community action agencies that we have the very same mission, and it's to eradicate poverty through the United States. The network, which is called the National Community Action Partnership, came together with the passage of the Economic Opportunity Act in 1964. So there are 1,000 agencies that do the similar things that we do. So again, our mission is to eradicate poverty. The way that we do that, there's several ways in which we do that. Our primary way for us is education and early childhood education. People are familiar with Head Start, all right? We run 6 Head Start centers in Rochester, and we have 2 partners who operate a center each. So we're responsible for about 1,100 children in between the ages of 0 to 5 that we try to literally give a head start. We do a tremendous amount of workforce development and getting people ready for the world of work. We find it that it's easy for people to get a job. It's harder to maintain a job, to retain that job. So we do a lot of work with individuals in trying to get them ready for the world of work, but mainly to maintain work. We also do work in the health field, whereby we have a substance abuse clinic that we call New Directions. Substance abuse, the scourge of substance abuse, prevents one from maintaining work. So we work with people to try to get them into treatment, and so that they can be able to function and provide for themselves and their families. Also in the health field, we have a project we call Action Front Center, where we work with people with AIDS and HIV to make sure that they have proper health, because unfortunately there's still stigma surrounding AIDS and HIV, which will prevent people from maintaining adequate employment. We also work on anti-violence. We have a project we call Save Our Youth, or SOY for short, where we actually work with young people and not so young people to, if you will, talk them off the ledge of violence and give them alternatives to take care of themselves and their families, as opposed to using violence to do that. So those are just some of the ways. We also have, don't let me forget, our housing project that we call weatherization, where we go into people's homes and make them more efficient. Again, the people we work with are poor, so that's our main criteria. If you're poor, we're going to help you. So with weatherization, we may put in new windows or a new furnace in a home, so that the occupants, whether they're renters or owners, will pay less of their little money that they have for utilities and energy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. The organization does a lot. Some I didn't even know that you did. So
Yeah.
fantastic. And I know our viewers are having a lesson in terms of what your organization does. So when I come back, Jerome, 30 seconds, I want to talk about what you are doing in Antigua and Barbuda, and I know you're doing something in Kenya. And then I want to talk about, because I know you and your wife are also entrepreneurs. So we have a lot to talk about in a short period of time. We'll be right back in 30 seconds. We are back. Of course, the 30 is produced by the Jackman Group LLC, and we are a leadership and development firm. We actually training and development firm. We concentrate on leadership, sales training, team enhancement, as well as business coaching. Jerome, before we broke for those 30 seconds, we were going to be talking now about what you're doing outside of the U.S., back in your homeland of Antigua and Barbuda, and also in Africa, as well as some of your entrepreneurship things that you're doing right here in Rochester. And again, if you have any questions or comments, if you just want to give Jerome a shout out, drop it in the comments field. So let's talk about some of the things that you're doing back home in Antigua.
Sure. My wife and I, my wife Lorna, of 32 years, we consider ourselves to be.
Congratulations on that too.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we consider ourselves to be budding philanthropists, and again, it's something that, again, I think it's in our DNA. Again, from my grandmother, our parents, and also Lorna's parents, the mighty Underwoods, as we call ourselves. It's been bred into us to help others, when you can, where you can. So in Antigua, in the neighborhood that I grew up, there's an elementary school. So shout out to Villa School. The neighborhood that my wife grew up in, Jamaica, Banbury, there's an elementary school, Victoria primary school there. So we're working with a couple projects to help them do a couple things. Let's put it that way. With respect to supporting education in Jamaica and also in Antigua. Also on our sister island of Barbuda. Uh, if you recall, and your listeners recall, um, just over 4 years ago, there was a devastating hurricane in Barbuda, Hurricane Irma, which was just horrific. And Lorna and I visited Barbuda uh, several months after Hurricane Irma and saw the devastation. And we came back to Rochester and raised up, if you will, the Rock Barbuda Relief Committee. And so many people in Rochester were generous and donated a number of things. And we were able to ship about a dozen barrels of, you name it, school supplies, food, to Barbuda. I went back to Barbuda early this year, actually, because we're continuing our work in Barbuda, particularly with the elementary school, and we're helping to work on a literacy project there. And finally, Kenya. Uh, our family visited Kenya this past October, and anywhere we go, we try to find a project to do. Uh, and Lorna found an orphanage. The name of the orphanage is Dream Children's Home. And we went there and we visited with them for a couple of days and just fell in love with what's been happening there at Dream Children's Home. So we decided that we are going to, quote unquote, adopt the orphanage. And the way we're supporting a number of the children attending that orphanage financially, not just with our own funds, but we've asked friends and loved ones to join us in that support, and a number of people have. So it's Kenya, it's Antigua and Barbuda, it's Jamaica, is wherever we go, we try to help, because along the way, people have helped us. And on the entrepreneurship side, um, my wife is an amazing culinary expert, an amazing culinary expert. So a little over 3 years ago, we raised up Caribbean Heritage, or Mighty Good Food LLC. I mentioned Mighty is my wife's maiden name. So the little corporation we have, Mighty Good Food LLC. We have recently closed the restaurant, but we're doing catering for you pick an event, and we're doing catering. As a matter of fact, this weekend is Juneteenth, and we have a couple events that we're doing for Juneteenth. So when I'm off of doing ABC work, I do what Lorna tells me to do to make sure that our finances are right for Caribbean Heritage. And with that, our extended family here in Rochester, Lorna's sisters and brothers, we have a wonderful family that is extremely supportive of each other. And again, it's something that has been bred into us, and we've been very fortunate, and life has been very, very fair to us here in Rochester and beyond.
That's awesome, Jerome. And I can attest that Lorna is an awesome cook. And some people in my household here are very upset at the restaurant being closed. And they let her know that last Sunday at church. So
you'll have to pick that up with Mrs. Underwood. Yeah. But before I go, Patrick, I need to congratulate you. If I'm not mistaken, this is the 101st episode of the 30. And because it is Caribbean Heritage American Month, and you are one of us, as a matter of fact, my sister lives in Barbados
there we go.
with her husband. So shout out to the folks in Barbados. But I just wanted to congratulate you on this 101st episode, and just keep it going, brother.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerome. We certainly will. I see this as a way to tell the story, but bring hope to folks, give them knowledge and information that they need to maybe something would appeal to them to take them from where they are to where they should be. So it's not about me, but it's about really extending the knowledge and the information that comes from great guests like yourself. So thank you. Before we leave, Jerome, what are some of the things, give us some words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience that will get them to do something, get them to move, get them engaged. So give us some words of wisdom.
You know, for me, and I think, many in our family, knowledge of self is really, 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 really important. And Patrick, you and I have had conversations where you know that I'm a student of African history, and our spirituality. For me personally, that has helped to ground me, knowing that I have a responsibility not only to my family but to my community,
Mm-hmm.
to be a contributor to it rather than a taker from it, if you will. So I would say to folks, you know, all of us have, I would say, several God given talents. And to search yourself through your lineage and find out what that talent is, nurture that talent, get people of similar minds, that you can lean on, because we all need somebody to lean on for mentorship, for camaraderie, and just to share. And I think with that, in that knowledge of self, working on your talents, and then this realization that we have to live with each other, regardless of where we are. But you want to be a contributor to that society rather than a consumer from that society. Don't be a burden or menace to society. And the way you do that is working on your talent, whatever that talent is. Whatever that talent is to use that for the betterment. And that's why I love the name of the agency that I'm privileged to lead: Action
Mm-hmm.
for a Better Community.
Awesome. Awesome, Jerome. Just one question here from Dorita in H-Town. Dorita says, share his information with me. My goddaughter is in Rochester. So if you want to
So,
give your information so that the
absolutely.
viewers can contact you, be great.
Absolutely. I'll give my email address first, which is J Underwood altogether at abcinfo at abcinfo.org. That's J Underwood at abcinfo.org. A phone number where you can reach me via WhatsApp as well is 585 414 7345. That's 585 414 7345.
Awesome. And then we'll drop that also in the chat after the show. Jerome, I want to thank you so very much. Althea Robinson says excellent interview slash information.
And
So thank you.
she's from my neighborhood in Antigua.
Oh, got it. Wow.
Tell you people from Antigua say I got to be on good behavior. So I got folks watching me because the pressure. So,
And it's Anthea, not Althea. Anthea.
Anthea.
There
Yes,
we
and
go.
just shout out to folks who are at home and anywhere, because I feel this, and it's not a burden for me, that this sense of responsibility, because as you see that flag behind me, I'm always representing that flag.
That's right.
Because it's a really, really sense of pride, to having been born and, like I said, raised in Antigua, and just my foundation, my frame, is all there.
Great. Jerome, well, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. Say hello to Lorna and the young men and lady in the house. So we will talk, and I'm sure that we'll connect and come back at any time. Feel free,
Yes.
not just when it's Caribbean American month, but
Yes.
at any time you have a home here. All right.
Indeed. And thank you,
All right.
Patrick. And again, thanks for your listeners. It's a privilege to be here. There's only a few weeks in June, so to have been asked to come represent the region, of which, again, our family is 8 Caribbean countries represented. So it's an honor and a privilege. And thank you, Patrick.
You are welcome. Thank you, Jerome. So we've been talking to Jerome Underwood. He's currently the president and CEO of action for a better community here in Rochester, New York. But he's also he does so many things: entrepreneur, giver of himself and his finances. As you heard, 32 plus years of marriage. So fantastic, and representing his homeland, Antigua and Barbuda. And so I want to thank him for being here. And I want to thank you, the viewer, for being here as well. If you have any comments that you'd like to drop us, I'm going to put our information here. Any show suggestions is info@jackmangroup.llc.com. That is info@jackmangroup.llc.com. So we say thank you once again, and we will see you next week with another inspiring story and journey as we celebrate National Caribbean American Heritage Month. We'll see you next time. Be blessed and be safe.